Hey, my friends, welcome to the gathering. I am David Ault. It has been a week of disruption of routine due to illness. Both my partner and I got sick, and that, you know, how that just throws everything up in the air. And so, in our mutual recovery positions and time frames, we've spent a lot of time being still and taking our little mugs and going into our respective corners to heal. Mine being outside, we have really worked hard on cultivating a place of serenity in our backyard. And I go and we have so many birds and so much bird singing that oftentimes we open these apps and they'll tell you what the sounds of the birds are. It's quite fascinating. And I've noticed that in the last month or so, there has been that familiar cooing of the dove. And doves are common, but in the more than 3.5 years that we've been here, I've never heard them, not among all of the cacophony of all the other birds. And so it was kind of strange to go, oh, look, there's a mourning dove. And so confession, I am today years old, in learning that the morning dove is not the morning as in morning, good morning, which I've always thought that it was, but that it is spelled mourning, mourning, as in mourning the loss of something. And of course, because that cooing is so mournful and so provocative and so getting underneath some surface feeling to touch us in a place that perhaps oftentimes is overlooked or outpaced, to get in touch with the morning. And the only reason that I discovered that this morning about mourning doves is being fascinated by the sound and going, I wonder why that dove is here now, and looking it up, and there was the spelling. Wow. So, judge me. Rightly so. And I wanted to look up the totem. I wanted to look up the meaning of the mourning dove. And so many of the translations say that it is our deceased letting us know, reaching out to letting us know that they're okay. But one of the other definitions that really spoke to me was that the mourning dove represents resilience, and how important resilience is to not give up hope and to not sink into despair. That made a lot of sense to me. I told you it's been around for about a month, and in this last month, I've just noticed this unprecedented, weird fear of the nature of the division in our world. As a gay man and the whole spectrum of the LGBTQ community, just watching the vitriol that is being manufactured within our government in America and places like Florida, and how this has just continued to escalate, so much so that laws are being passed. And watching my collective, my fellow beings within the spectrum of the gay community having to once again deal with this in this targeted way. And yesterday reading how many people are packing up and moving away, families moving away from Florida because they are no longer safe or viable to get care for their children, their trans children. And it just is heartbreaking to me. And when things like that, when you observe things like that, and you know that the reason why it is circling back and happening once again, this division of the us and them, is for political gain, is for greed. It's greed. It's the greed of power and the perpetual play by play that power brings, and the way in which having the need to defeat something and to blame something and to target something is just the cyclical nature of human beings. And to witness it happening, amongst your own, once again, it's very, very hard. And so there's the mourning dove cooing, that mournful sound, and reminding me, trying to get my attention, not only to spell it right, but to understand the necessity for resilience. And resilience is the piece that reminds us that we must stay above the despair. I use the term stay above the despair because that was a pivotal moment in my life in shamanism, when I was in a particular ceremony with a person who was working with grandfather medicine. And it was a ceremony years ago that had to do with tobacco, and the liquid tobacco and the ingestion and through the nostrils. And I remember that I was in this ceremony and, just kind of feeling normal and just thinking that I was a space holder, that what was happening in this particular ceremony didn't have anything to do with me. And I was there to just be mindful and to hold space. And when it came my turn in the rounds with the tobacco medicine, I participated. And then when it was over, all of a sudden, everything kind of went blank. And I remember, the last thing that I remember is being engulfed in heaving sobs, just sobbing and sobbing and sobbing. And so much so that I lost control of my ability to stand. And I was standing with the shaman. And he took his arm and he had to cup me from behind underneath my shoulders to hold me up, because this sobbing was just wrenching me and taking all of my agility and all of my control. And the last thing that I remember he whispered into my ear as this was going on. It just completely took me by surprise. He whispered in my ear, "Stay." He goes, "You got this. Stay above the despair. Stay above the despair. You are crying the tears of generations. You must stay above the despair and honor the vessel. Honor the vessel of crying the tears of generations. Stay above the despair." And he kept emphasizing that part about stay above the despair. And the only thing that I could discern in that moment and comprehend was that this wasn't about me, and that it was a responsibility of me to not completely give up. If you look up the word despair, it is a complete loss or absence of belief. And when we look at the mental health of us as a species, and we see so many people dropping down below this, we could, look at it as a line of demarcation, an emotional line of demarcation. And when you drop down below that line, it's very difficult to get back above it. And so he was urging me, challenging me, calling me to not drop below that particular line, but to shed the tears, to purge all of that in a way that I did not succumb to it, if that makes sense. And when that was over, when that ceremony was over and just kind of wrung me out, I didn't so much know or understand what the purging was about, as much as I walked away with that particular mandate: stay above the despair, because I saw that it wasn't siloed or isolated to that one particular moment, that it was sort of a clarion call for you and for I, a responsibility for us as sentient beings, as those on spiritual paths, to at times be that for other people, to be the one holding up the ones who are sinking below that line of demarcation, and to also remember it when we find ourselves sinking down, to stay above this despair. Don't allow yourself, and I know it sounds clinical and sort of sanitized in a way, to just say don't do it, but you can understand. I'm going to trust that you can hear what is within the words, beyond the words, about that. And so this morning dove, the cooing of the dove, the sound of the dove this morning, reminding me about resilience. And so when I think about resilience and the gift of it, the constancy of that, the beckoning of it, I see that the responsibility of being the touchstone for that comes from you and I, through our life, through the environments that we create, through the art that we create, through the habits that we build, through the languaging, that it isn't about our accomplishments. It isn't about our cleverness. It isn't about anything more than you and I taking on the mantle of responsibility to remind the world of resilience, because resilience is the lifeline that keeps us above despair, to stay above despair. And so resilience is a muscle. I wrote resilience is a muscle developed by doing exactly what we're talking about, staying above the despair. And so to live a life of resilience, to be a guidepost of resilience, to be resilience in human form, is a high calling. It's a high calling. And so that and just the symbology and the totem of the dove also reminds me of an extraordinary lesson that came to me many, many decades ago about the dove. And that is found within the biblical story of Noah and the ark. And whatever your interpretation of that story is, or whatever your feelings are about that, set it aside for a moment and look at every element of it as an archetype. And now draw your attention to the dove. In some analysis, it says that the dove was Noah's best friend. Of all the things, of all the life forms that are surrounding him, it is the dove that he has become most dependent upon. And if you think about Noah as an archetype of a person amongst great challenge, the destruction of the earth, the destruction of form, of things held sacred, of things as we know it, the destruction of all of that. That is an easy recipe for despair, particularly when there is no end in sight, when the flooding of circumstances is such that it doesn't seem to cease or end. The dove becomes the lifeline. The dove becomes the friend of this person that keeps them above despair. And how does it do that? It becomes a messenger. It becomes a way shower. And so by releasing the dove, why does Noah release the dove? Because Noah's vision is limited. Noah's circumstance is limited with regards to his ability to understand. He must do something to reach beyond his limitation and understanding. And so he turns to the dove, and the dove goes and flies out because it has a different perspective. It has a different capability. It has a different vision system, and it can travel far, and it can come back and it can say, not yet. It can travel and not find a place to land and then come back. And even if it can't find a place to land, does not mean that you then don't release the dove again. And so it becomes a repetitive spiritual practice for you and I to stay in harmony with and in relationship with the dove, with resilience. You may not have a place to land or feel like you have any groundedness. You may be in a place that is perpetually untethered, and that's very unusual and very chaotic to you. It may feel unsafe, but understand that that's temporary. When you feel that your situation is being threatened, when you feel as though everything around you is being destroyed, that the life that you know is being pulled from underneath you and being flooded out, can you also hold in mind that none of these things are happening without a meticulousness to them, a divine design? And so we must continue to send out doves, looking for places to land. Sending out doves can be that you are sending out your creativity, your aspirations, your goals, the shifts and the changes and the quality of your being. You're sending those things out. And even though there is not an immediate return, there is no place for it to land, does not mean that you and I cease doing that. In the avalanche of opposition, in the avalanche of human threatening, do we sink below the despair and allow that then to just drown us? Or do we understand that this is the time, this is the moment where we regain our reunion with resilience, and we keep sending out the dove? And in the story, what we realize is that eventually, in the right moment, in the perfect timing, the dove now comes back with a reminder that things are shifting and changing naturally. The cycles that we go through, the repetitive cycles, are exactly that. They are cycles, and every cycle has its ebb and flow. The dove comes back with an olive branch, symbolizing that which is the mystery, that which is the destroyer, is starting to recede, and new life is being shown. And I want you to know that the same holds true for you and I. That's why you and I get the opportunity, this amazing opportunity, to to be the dove, to be the symbol of resilience when the rest of the world might be wanting to just fall below that line and succumb to a drowning of themselves. To hang in there, to be resilient. It means that we must not just talk about kindness, but we must be kindness in every single aspect of our being, that we must not be hoarders of opportunity, but that we must be shining light on opportunities for everyone to win as much as possible, because there is no limitation to that ability and that energy of thriving. We must be that for one another. And then the beautiful thing about the dove in the story with Noah is that eventually it does not come back. It doesn't come back. It doesn't come back home because it has found its place in the world. It has found new life in the world. And that's what happens with your steadfastness with resilience and giving it out to the world. It then finds new places, new pockets, new territories, new life to land across our planet, across our existence in a way that we may not be able to see, but we know that it's there. That's another way of saying that you have no idea how your influence of resilience, how your kindness, how your generosity, how your love continues to live on in the world. You don't always know, many times don't know how that reaches other people because it is taking on its own form of life. And so stay above the despair. Don't stop in building the muscle of your resilience. Allow the song of the dove and the sweet, mournful sounds of that to tell you that it's okay to grieve. It's okay to feel sad, of course. That is a part of the human experience. But don't allow it to become the weight that pulls you down below an understanding, an awareness, a truth that love is eternal, that life is eternal, and that our job, our role, what if our one singular job is to be the beacon of resilience? And if you can be that, if I can be that, then we have fulfilled our soul's mission and purpose. That in and of itself is enough. Stay above the despair, my friend. I love you so much. You are needed. You are so needed and valued and loved.